know that Dharwad Katte started its program during the time when the whole world was crushed under the terrific attack of COVID pandemic. Since then, Dharwad Katte has been organizing various programs on nationalism, culture, nation, literature, and so on. It has been organizing many programs like celebration of birth anniversary of Kuvempu, Tagore, Shakespeare, Dr. Rajkumar, and so on. In this connection, Dharwad Katte started one more interesting series on revisiting ancient Indian dynasties. Today, we have sixth session of this series, and today is the last session of this series. However, there is one announcement that every last Sunday of every month, we are going to listen to Professor Basavaraj Donor. He is going to speak on Shakespeare's plays. Every week, he is going to speak on one play by Shakespeare. This is one program which the Dharwad Katte has scheduled. However, we are also coming up with one more interesting series like the present one. Today, we are going to listen to Dr. Arjun, Assistant Professor, Department of History and Dr. Sanjeev. Can you mute? Thank you. Today, we are going to listen to Dr. Arjun, Assistant Professor, Department of History and Archaeology, Central University of Karnataka, Kalaburgi. To this program, I welcome Dr. Arjun, who has accepted our invitation, and he is going to deliver his talk on Kadamba Dynasty, the first Kannada Empire, foundations to nationalism, culture, and language from historical and archaeological lenses. I also welcome Professor Basavaraj Donur, Honorary President, Dharwad Katte, Head Department of English, Director Academics, Central University of Karnataka. I also welcome all the listeners, Dharwad Katte, and our media persons and members, Dharwad Katte. Before I hand over the platform to Dr. Arjun, a brief introduction about Dharwad Katte. It's my immense pleasure to introduce Dr. Arjun, my good friend who is working at the Central University of Karnataka. Arjun's research focuses on Indian prehistory and landscape archaeology, particularly in the semi-arid and of tropical savanna regions of Karnataka. In spite of presenting a number of research articles at the national and international seminars, he has presented his research articles in UK, Ireland, Thailand, and many other countries. As a principal investigator, Arjun has led several archaeological projects. One among them is the Koppa Archaeological Research Project, funded by the National Geographic Discovery of Prehistoric Sites of Raichur. He is a well-known researcher in history and archaeology. Sir, I welcome you and hand over the platform to you. The talk will continue for around 60 minutes, followed by some few words by Professor Basavaraj Donur. Then the platform will be opened for discussions and questionnaire. Till then, our listeners can also post their questions in our chat box, which will be considered after the talk. Now, over to Dr. Arjun. Sir, please.
Thank you, Dr. Prakash Balikai, for the introduction.
Yes, sir, you are audible, sir. Please continue.
Yes. I'm just presenting the slides. Okay, I hope you can see the slide.
Yes, sir, it is visible. Please
Okay,
continue.
thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening to all the participants. Before I start delivering my talk on the given topic, let me also thank the Honorary President, Professor Basavaraj Donu sir, who is leading this Dharwad Katte very effectively since years together and consistently as well. And I should also congratulate his team members for doing this consistently. Now, as we go into the topic, as the title itself says, the this talk will be focused on the Kadamba dynasty with a broad classification such as on understanding their political history and cultural background. The second part we will be discussing on their inscriptions and numismatic evidences. And the third part, I will try to make every attempt to you take the listeners from pure historical debates or historical background towards archaeological background, in which archaeology also plays a quite important role in understanding how the foundations of a state or foundations of economic prosperity of a state establish, and that can be understood through their town planning, urbanization, through their establishment of number of sites, taxation systems, and supported with lot of inscriptional evidences which tells us about the script, the language, and also the historical content, which is very useful to develop or to understand the period in question. Now, going step by step, before we enter into the background of Kadamba dynasty, let us try to understand what was the situation of the Indian context or the state establishment of the state context by 4th century Common Era. As we all know, the many of the kingdoms that is quite prior to the 4th century Common Era. I mean, it was the Shatavahanas who were ruling before the Kadambas, and before the Kadambas, and in the northern territories or in the northern Indian portions, there were a number of kingdoms who had already established their state. For example, starting with the Mahajanapadas, quite larger states than the Janapadas, and Mahajanapadas replacing with the first major empires like the Mauryas, and followed by number of states such as the Kushana, Sungas, uh, so on. Now, the period in question that we are talking to understand, and the region is the southern region. By and large, the southern states or the southern India was majorly known through understanding the expansion and cultural developments within the state of Shatavahanas. And to be very precise, much of the kingdom that we see in this map or marked in this map, or later which Kadambas expanded their territory, also includes the provinces of the Shatavahanas. As you also know, the earliest inscriptions in this part of the regions are the Ashokan rock edicts. Now, why Ashokan rock edicts become very important is the distribution of or how it is located in number of sites, which also tells us a story that in the Karnataka, in the borders of Karnataka particularly, a number of settlements have already developed and it has established for its social and economic prosperity. And that is also one of the reasons why Ashokan rock edicts are highly concentrated in the regions of today Karnataka. I mean, most of the out of 11 Ashokan rock edicts, 9 Ashokan rock edicts are located in Karnataka, and they are in a very different temperate zone, but in the central and northern part of Karnataka. And the core regions or the capital city itself of the Kadambas that we are talking is the Western Ghats. Now, there is an invariable relationship between the Western Ghats of Karnataka and what we call the Bayalusime, where the Dharwad Katte has its core audience, and the Bayalusime and further into the northern Karnataka or northern Maidan, which we technically say. This is the region that had already connected in terms of economy, trade, and establishment of settlements. These settlements may need not be like the what we settlements talk about in the northern or northwestern India as in the urbanization form. They may not be a bigger cities or larger cities which is well planned and so on. But however, the settlements had already established, the people or the population expansion had already occurred, and therefore this is the region, the Kadamba Empire, the territory of the Kadamba Empire, the erstwhile former regions of the Shatavahana largely. It was a very important part of the region in terms of the economy, because the Western Ghats or the western part of Karnataka was resourcefully rich with its flora and fauna, particularly flora which is of importance to the spices, and the spices which had established its trade contact very well. We also get the trade contact evidences between the Banavasi with the Romans, with the findings of the Roman coins. That is one of the testimonial to answer to a question why the earliest kingdom of Karnataka, which is located in the heart of the dense forest cover. I mean, today's the Shivamogga region may not be as dense as we see due to the lot of forestation and forest clearance. However, we are talking about 1500, 1800 years ago. And this constitute the Malenadu as well as the Shivamogga part of Western Ghats. It had constituted a very important region in terms of forest resources, and it had established its trade contacts with the outer world. And I can say that this could be one of the prominent reason why the Banavasi, or earlier it was called as Vanavasi, is located in the Western Ghats and which was made as the capital of the first Kannada Empire as a background. Second one is, as I told you, in the southern state, we have references from the Sangam literature. And the Sangam literature also testifies that the northern boundaries of the Sangam region, when we say northern boundaries of the Sangam region, is the beyond Kaveri. Kaveri and further north is the northern extreme of Sangam region. And Sangam literature also tells us about number of forest economy driven trade happening in the western ghats of Karnataka, including the region of Banavasi or Vanavasi in question. So therefore, we are talking about a region which is demographically as well as economically happening, and it is quite important and strategic region for any states to control over this part of Kadamba region. That is why we can see that Shatavahanas and later the Shatavahanas and the contemporary of Kadambas, the Pallavas, and the Kadambas who became later feudatories to the Chalukyas and Rashtrakuta, they are all becoming very important in this part of the region because it is a demographically, culturally very rich and potential area for developing and expansion of trade and economy. And not only trade and economy, the religious development and the cultural developments that we can see in this part of Karnataka is throughout. You have Vaishnavism, Shaivism, Buddhism, Jainism, all kind of religious developments with lot of cultural prosperity occurring in this part of the geographical condition or geographical region. I hope with this background of geo-economic importance, we can try to also understand geopolitical importance. Why we consider the Kadamba dynasty as the first Kannada empire is basically based on the evidence of Kannada inscriptions, and Kannada considered to be one of the administrative languages or administered official languages of the Kadambas. However, in addition to that, we should also try to understand that we have to understand the Kadamba as the first empire because in this part, that is the larger proportion of Karnataka, was having a first empire or the first capital city in its heartland of Karnataka. So, with that understanding, we should understand that why Kadamba Empire is very, very important for us to understand. Because if we, without Kadamba Empire, without understanding the Kadamba dynasty, it is very difficult to understand the later state development, the formation of the states. For example, after Kadambas was to rise the Chalukyas of Badami. Now, the shift from Banavasi to Badami is another big understanding or another area of very good research that has to be understood. We are talking that it is a quite significant area to understand the continuity of state politics, and this led to the foundation of, or let me put it in a very simple words, the Kadamba Empire laid the foundation of state formations in Karnataka or in southern India by large. Now, who is Kadamba, or for whom we are calling about Kadamba dynasty, is that we are talking about the Kadambas who ruled from 345 Common Era to 525 Common Era. For almost 280 years, the Kadambas ruled the larger part of Karnataka and part of today's Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh or undivided Andhra Pradesh, and part of Goa as well. Now, by and large, two of the very well known cities, other than Banavasi, Banavasi was the capital of Kadambas, and very close to the Banavasi is Talagunda. Talagunda seems to also have been a very important trade center next to Banavasi or closer to Banavasi. And a lot of inscriptions that comes as a very vital information of Kannada origin as well as Sanskrit origin comes from the adjoining region called Talagunda. So therefore, Talagunda and Banavasi can be considered as a twin cities or twin settlements that was heart of the social as well as state politics during the Kadamba period. However, over the period of time, in the middle of the 6th century, the Kadambas' suzerainty started to decline, and they eventually became one of the feudatories of the Chalukyas. However, by 10th and 13th century, the Kadamba lineage continues in its different branches. That means even up to Chalukyas and Rashtrakutas who were ruling from the heart of the Karnataka region, the Kadambas continued its lineage in a very smaller scale, particularly in the two branches. That is, one branch of Kadamba lineage, they were ruling from Hanagal, which is in Dharwad district, Kadambas, and they are popularly called as Kadambas of Hanagal. The other another branch is the Kadambas of Goa. They had the present Dharwad, Karwar, and Belagavi districts in their domain. So, therefore, our focus in this lecture or in this talk will be on the classical Kadamba Empire or the foremost Kadamba Empire who ruled from 345 to 525 Common Era. I will not be going into the details of Kadambas of Hanagal or Kadambas of Goa, but for your general understanding, it should not be confused. When we say Kadamba dynasty, we are referring to the earliest dynasty. The later is the branches of lineage in Kadambas, that is the Kadambas of Hanagal and Kadambas of Goa. So I have also explained you what was the development of states or state politics or social formations before Kadambas. Before Kadambas, even if you consider the Mauryas had expanded their administrative control up to the Karnataka, by and large, it is also very much debatable whether whether the Karnataka or southern states were under the control of Mauryas or it was just a social influence or cultural influence that they had developed. However, a clear-cut social state formation in the form of Shatavahanas and their feudatories Chutus were ruling the Banavasi or the larger part of Kadambas, which were taken over by the Kadamba Empire. Now, who are Kadambas? That is another very interesting debate, and there is a lot of unsettled debates in understanding who is Kadambas or who are this Kadamba lineage, where did they come from. However, when it comes to language, we should clearly understand that the 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 inscriptional evidences of Kadambas, they go back up to 4th century Common Era, and the there is a large gap of inscriptional evidences after the Ashokan rock edicts, almost particularly in the regions of Karnataka, very strictly saying in the regions of Karnataka, after the Mauryan edicts or Ashokan rock edicts, and down up to the edicts, inscriptions of Kadambas in 4th century Common Era, there is a long gap, and during this period, what we called the Brahmi form of Kannada had clearly evolved. That became one of the advantage or one of the foundations where grammatically Kannada had already evolved in this phase. And by the time the Kadambas started to rule, the Kannada as itself as a language and Kannada as a script, we can clearly distinguish in its own evolutionary pattern compared to the other Brahmi inscriptions of the earlier periods. So, therefore, Kannada is a language that was probably quite popular among the people. However, Sanskrit had also made its influence to a certain extent. That is evident in the form where Sanskrit inscriptions are also found in good numbers in comparison to the inscriptions of Kannada. Now, who are these Kadambas? There are a lot of debate. Let me very quickly give you a background of it. There are theories which touch into the mythological form as well as with the pure historical evidence form. Going in terms of mythological theories, it is said that the originator of this dynasty was born with 3 eyes and 4 arms, and he was called as Trilochana Kadamba, who is considered to be the father of Mayura Sharma. Another theory or legend which talks about that is Mayura Sharma himself was descendant from the sweat of god Shiva, and he was born under the Kadamba tree. And since this Kadamba tree, a flowering tree, is associated with the name Kadambas, probably the Kadamba word must have origin from this context of tree. However, even in the historical records or in the Talagunda inscriptions, to be very precisely, Kadamba tree, that is the natural tree which had flowering capabilities, it has also taken its historical importance. So probably when we talk about the ecological association of the Kadamba tree, it is also associated with a tribal origin. Further, mythologies also talks about the Mayura Sharma must have born to a Shiva who was named as a Shiva and the mother as Bhudevi, and this can be contextually taken as a divine origin. Some of the least historical evidences also says that they were Nagas and they have descended from the Nandas in the northern India. Nandas were rulers in northern India before the Magadha and the Magadha and Mauryas ruled in the Pataliputra or in the extreme northern India. So one of the historical evidence, but it is not much well established inscriptional evidence that we can see. Very very late Kadamba inscription that talks is the Kadamba Rudra inscription, which is dated to 12th century, that is almost 700 years after the fall of Kadambas. It talks about a kingdom of Kadamba and it talks about forest of Kadamba trees. There was a forest, ecological conditioned forest of full of Kadamba trees, and the descendants or the people who came from that forest ecology were Kadambas, and they established the kingdom called Kadamba. This is another theory. However, to go with etymologically, what is Mayura Verma or Mayura Sharma? It also talks about the first who founded the empire or who established the empire, and he is considered to have the feathers of peacock, and that is why, with that terminology, he is called as the Mayura Verma or Mayura Sharma. Geographical origin is, when it comes to geographical origin, there are two debates. One debate is they are in the local kingdom or the local region, that is, they are origin from Karnataka. The other theory points out at the northern Indian origin. However, if you like, go into the details of pure inscriptional evidences, which is much more reliable. It clearly tells a different understanding. For example, the inscriptions that are verified by the Chopara and other historians, they call the Kadambo. There was a tribe called Kadambu, and Kadambu tribes were in Kadamba forests, and they established conflict with the Chera kingdom, as seen in the Sangam literature. So they are the one who established this Kadamba dynasty. Further, in the same Sangam literature refers to a community or the people who are called as totemic worshippers. And totemic worshippers, they were worshipping the Kadamba tree, and they were worshipping the Hindu gods, the Subramanya, the Lord Subramanya. Remember, these two contexts are very important because in the sculptures of the Kadamba period temples or the Kadamba Naga inscription of Banavasi itself, there are two references to the ecological point of view. That one refers to the trees called Kadamba trees. The other point of evidence is where the Naga sculptures or the Naga evidences, which also tells us that they were the worshippers of trees and the snakes, which were called as the Kadambu and the Subramanya, the Lord Subramanya. Similarly, R.N. Nandi, who studied number of inscriptions, he also tries to understand that these Kadamba trees and Kadamba flowers, the people who were living in this forest, they had the tribal origin, and therefore the Kadambas came from the forest or the inlands of the tribal origin. Further, the debates continue, and now the debates also starts to focus on how possibly, the Kadambas were associated with the Brahmanism, with the worshippers of Veda and rituals and sacrifices. This association is mainly becomes important when the Mayura Sharma migrated to the Kanchi for his studies, and that is how one of the narrative understands to it. Overall, in terms of administrative and political significance and understanding in the background of pure administrative and inscriptional evidences that it has, it clearly tells us that here is a community or here is a kingdom which has a Kannada or Karnataka origin. Since it is the location or the region we are discussing is Karnataka, and it is fundamentally understood that they are Kannada origin, and that makes to tell us that here is a one of a first Kannada kingdom which originated in the Karnataka, and that was established by the Kannada ruling lineage. Further, the Talagunda inscription that was composed during the Shantivarman in 450 Common Era, it gives a clear evidence how the Kadamba dynasty might have started. I believe that many of us, particularly the people of Karnataka, has seen a movie called The Mayura, and this was the words are very small to tell that how big this movie was. It was very well narrated, very well explained, particularly based on the inscriptional evidences that was read in the Talagunda inscription. I think I don't have to go into the details. If you know the story of that movie, that means you are studying part of the Talagunda inscription, where Mayura Sharma, he was a native of a Talagunda. Talagunda is close to the Banavasi, or today's the Shivamogga, what the city of Shivamogga, what we see. So he proceeded towards Kanchi in 345, and he got into the conflict with the Pallava guard and Pallava ruler, and it further escalated the humility to Mayura Sharma, and he vowed to overthrow the Pallavas from the Kadamba region. So the basic differences we should understand is that Mayura Sharma stood for eliminating Pallavas in the Karnataka region. Uh, so it had nothing to do directly with the Pallavas, the Pallava kingdom, the region of Pallava kingdom, with that of the hinterlands of the Kadamba kingdom or Kadamba region that we are talking about. So his guru as well as his grandfather, who was Veera Sharma, he was running a school, Gatika, and to study in that school, the Mayura Sharma was sent, and he was also a royal lineage. He was also a part of royal lineage, and further, you know the how the movie has explained over the climax. Ultimately, he was able to establish a very independent kingdom called Kadamba Kingdom. And why it is called as independent? Before that, what was the condition? The condition was the region, the part of the region was subjugated indirectly under the Pallavas or the Chutus on the other hand. So he liberated from the hands of the Pallava, and Pallavas were a Tamil origin or the Tamil dynasty, and it is nothing. It has nothing to do with the Kannada origin of dynasty. So therefore, one of the further understanding is that this led to the freedom of Kannadigas, or the establishment of the very sovereign, independent, and humble, and culturally a very rich, economically very prosperous region, which was ruled by the Kadambas. So this is what the inscriptions also very clearly tell. On the other hand, the same Talagunda inscription, further with the Gudnapur inscription, they also talk about the Gotra. They identify that they belong to the Kadambas belong to the Manavaya Gotra, who are Hartriputras, known as the Harthi lineage. So, therefore, there is a lot of debate in understanding who are these Kadambas, but inscriptional evidences are very pinpointly suggesting that here is a kingdom which was established by the local regions of that part of Banavasi, which claims to tell us that they were Kannadigas and who established Kannada kingdom. There are a number of inscriptions, about 21 Kannada inscriptions and 2 Sanskrit inscriptions are very prominent to study the political history, cultural history, administration, and expansion, the political expansion of the Kadambas by and large. On the other hand, when we talk about archaeological sources or archaeological evidences, next to inscriptions, coins also plays a very crucial role. Now, for any state to establish its sovereignty, the sovereignty can be expressed or the sovereignty can be claimed when there is their own system of administration. Out of that system of administration, the economical institution is also one of it. And the economic institution is invariably determined with how they trade. And one part of trade could be barter, the other part of trade is the coins or the currency. Now, sorry, for any state or for any ruler, issuing coins or claiming the sovereignty through the currency is a very crucial step. Or let me put it in other word, one who issues coin, it will clearly establish the ruler's sovereignty and power to a larger extent. So therefore, we have to understand numismatics or currency of Kadambas or coins of Kadambas in two ways. One is in the in Karnataka for the very first time there are now coins which are issued by a Kannada ruling kingdom, and these coins are bearing very importantly legends of Kannada. This is nowhere ever occurred before Kadambas in Karnataka. Or the Kadambas were first to issue coins which has Kannada legend. Therefore, it is telling again that the same thing that what is it? It is a Kadamba state, which is of Kannada state. So this for it will established. Now the initial rulers of Kadamba kings, they started to issue currencies or coins which bears Kannada legends. And on the other hand, inscriptions tells us that Kannada was an official language or officially administrative language. So therefore, archaeological evidence becomes very clear that we start to get evidence of coins by 4th century Common Era. That means the later phases after the Mayura Sharma, Mayura Sharma further they were all busy with expansion of the kingdom. Many regions were brought into their administrative domain. However, particularly the coins started to appear a little bit later after once they stabilized with their expansion. So, what kind of inscriptions that bear Kannada? Particularly, one of a ruler of Kadamba, that is the Krishna Varman II, who ruled between 516 to 540, he issued number of coins which bear Kannada legends. For example, I think you can see on the left hand side. Let us start from top to bottom. The left hand side. These coins were found in archaeological excavations, and today they are displayed in different museums. Now, why we have to see these coins is, for example, you can see on the first coin on the obverse, you can see 3 to 4 letters of Kannada. These Kannada letters are also inscribed on the spoke wheel or in the chakra, or it is also called as Shanka type of coins. So these coins are rarest or earliest evidence to tell us that how Kannada as a language started to get its financial or economic importance. Through inscriptions, Kannada started to get its administrative status. Through inscriptions, it started to get its literary status. However, on the other hand, Kannada now also starts to get its financial status or currency of economic importance in the form of Krishnavarman II onwards. So wise you can see on the second coin, on the same kind of coins which are called as Shanka coins. Now on the legend side, you will see some of the Kannada words, Kannada letters. And on the other side, on the frontal side, you can see uh, script within the chakra. So therefore, these are one of the earliest coins which clearly establish and helps us to develop the chronology of how Kannada started to become a part of the financial status. For example, what is this Kannada legends read? One Kannada legends read Sri Do Shara Shi, which tells us the sovereign title of Krishnavarma II. So all these coins similarly bear a legend reading Shri Do Shara Shi, uh, which established the sovereignty of Krishnavarman II. How big the Mauryas, how big the Kadamba kingdom we are talking about? We are talking, as I told you, we are talking about Kadamba kingdom that started by middle of the 4th century to and it ended with the end of 6th century, somewhere 545 Common Era. Number of rulers have ruled the Kadamba dynasty, and particularly the initial rulers from the Mayura Verma down up to the Krishnavarma II, lot of cultural developments had taken place. And particularly, I believe that many of you are from the region of Dharwad, Hubli, Gadag, and further towards Belgaum. You can see number of temples, Hindu temples or Brahmanical temples, as well as the Jaina Basides, and some of the relics of Buddhist monasteries. They were extremely seen during the Kadamba period in this part of Karnataka. More or less, much of its contribution comes from the Kadambas. In the later part of my presentation, if we start looking back at the inscriptions, we will understand how the Kadambas gave established a very strong cultural patronage, and that strong cultural patronage became foundation later even for the Chalukyas and Rashtrakutas to rule later on from different parts of Karnataka. So another cross reference that we can get for the how prosperity the Kadambas were is the Allahabad pillar inscription of Samudragupta. Samudragupta, as you know, he was a Gupta ruler, and there is no direct connection between the Guptas or Samudragupta with the Kadambas. However, a cross reference which claims in the Samudragupta inscription is that it says that Samudragupta defeated the Pallava king Vishnugopa of Kanchi. That is possible because on the other side, from the western side of Karnataka, the Kadambas had already made significant damage to the Pallavas in terms of politics and in terms of army that they had developed. And they had, by the time of Guptas who are ruling in the north, the Kadamba kingdom was already expanded to the maximum extent. Now, what is the contribution of number of rulers? To go very quickly, I will not go into the details of the genealogy and the contributions. Mayura Sharma, after Mayura Sharma, his son Kangavarma took over and he ruled from 365. And he expanded his kingdom towards the Vakatakas, and he, what is now called as the Kuntala Desha, which is identified through a number of other inscriptions. Then later, after Kangavarma, Bhagirath took over, and it is said that the Vakatakas who had defeated Kangavarma, they started to take over the same regions back from Vakatakas, and they also mentions about Bhagirath in Talagunda inscription. And Talagunda inscription endorse saying that Bhagirath was sole lord, that means an independent king or the kingdom of Kadambas in this region. Later, his son Raghu continued to fight with the Pallavas, but the Kadambas had stopped Pallavas to the extreme south. They didn't allow them to come to the central part of Karnataka or the western part of Karnataka. Later, Raghu Kakusta Varman took over. However, this dissidence takes on and continues, And much more important development happens during the time of Ravi Verma, who succeeded in 485 Common Era. Now he marked his rule by overthrowing the sovereignty against the Pallavas and the Gangas of the Deccan or the Talakkad. So therefore, by the time of Ravi Verma, by 5th century Common Era, the Kadamba kingdom was expanded right from the center, that is the Maharashtra, up to Narmada. The kingdom was expanded and they started to rule in a very prosperous conditions. That is also attested by number of inscriptions. They are found even in Maharashtra. For example, the Sangoli inscriptions of Ravi Verma. It talks about how the kingdom had expanded throughout Maharashtra and reached very close to the region of Narmada or the Narmada River. So this all tells us how the kingdom had expanded and how the center of Banavasi, that is the capital city of Banavasi, was very important city or settlements when it has developed. Even when Chalukyas established their kingdom in Badami, the Chalukyas suggest that the Banavasi had developed in a very matured sense. After that, number of branches occurred within the Kadamba region, and it broke into pieces and parcels when Chalukyas took over their kingdom. Now, what do we understand by such a large kingdom in terms of administration? Again, when it comes to the inscriptional evidences, inscriptions Kadamba inscription talks about the administrative progress as well as administrative structures that were developed. Many of the Kadamba inscription refers to their king as Dharma Maharajas, which means that they were not small rulers, rather they were Maharajas and they were accordant in terms of Dharma. Sorry, not Dhamma, Dharma. Now, this Dharma Maharajas is a symbol or the title which clearly shows a sovereignty. It was a powerful sovereignty title one ruler can have when they are ruling very independently. And this Kadamba state was divided into number of mandalas or provinces, which they called as sometimes desha or mandalas. Mandalas were divided into vishayas, that is smaller province, and the Talagunda inscription says that there were 9 Vishyas, that is 9 districts or 9 smaller provinces which were ruled. Under a Vishya, they had a Mahagrama, that is the taluka levels or the grassroots level administration. So therefore, here is a state that we are looking at, which is decentralized as well as centralized in terms of monarchical kingdom. It is a monarchy, it is a feudal kingdom. However, when it comes to administration, a very well matured grassroots level administration can be seen. Often, when it comes to self governance and grassroots administration, in the historical records, we always refer to Uttara Meruru inscription of Parantaka Chola, which was belonging to Chola kingdom during the 10th and 11th century. However, in by 5th and 6th century itself in Karnataka, we had a clearly demarcated decentralized administration for the cultural and economic progress in Karnataka, which was established by the Kadambas. Coming to the taxes, taxes becomes one of the prominent revenue for any state or any kingdoms. Likewise, for Kadambas, they included 1/6 of land produce to be a revenue or a tax to be paid for the administration from the farmers. Number of other taxes are also referred in the inscription, such as the Perunjuka, which is a tax or a levy which was made on the load of the goods. Then Vaddaravalu, which is called a social security tax for royal family members, which was given to the royal family members. Then Bilkoda is another tax. Kirukula, that is the land tax. Pannaya, beetle tax. Beetle is uh, the chewing beetle that we talk. Even for that, there was a tax. Obviously, because we should understand the region. There, we are talking about the Western Ghats. So one of the speciality of Western Ghats is the beetle leaves and the beetle nuts. So they were very prosperous. Then I have to again go back to my earlier statement saying that the kingdom, the capital of the kingdom is located in a very very rich uh, botanical resource area. So therefore, the betel and betel leaves, which are also part of very sacred part of the Hindu rituals, as well as for the trade prosperity, Pannaya had to be taxed by them. Maurice, who studied and compiled inscriptions from different parts of Kadamba Empire, and he says that there are certain cabinet positions that were established by 5th century Common Era. What is that? Morris says that there was a Pradhana Mantri who is the head of all the ministers, which can be called as today's prime minister context. Steward, who is called as Manorgate. Secretary of Council, the inscriptions refers to Tantrapala or Sabrakana Sachiva. Then Vidya Vriddhas, who are scholars of elders. Deshamatyas are physicians. Rahasya Adhikaritha, they are private secretaries or they are spies or espionage. Sarvakarakarta, who is a chief secretary who looks into the chief offices. Dharma Daksha is a chief justice. Bhojaka and Ayukta are number of other officials. So what do we understand from inscriptions is also that their administrative setup was very very well defined, and it was so well defined that they used to collect taxes very very methodologically and in a very established way. For example, if you observe this table, you can understand on the right side number of grants that was given by the rulers. One side, their revenue was very precisely administered. On the other side, their taxes that were collected in the form of grants were also seen. For example, number of grants related to the villages gifted to the Brahmanas for ritual purposes, gift of privileges that is related to soldiers, excise duties for internal revenue consumption, then exemptions of tax for forced labor, that is Vishti. So therefore, exemptions as well as revenues, they were very clearly defined by 5th century. We are talking about a very matured revenue and taxation system that had developed by the Kadambas. Coming to the army, they Banavasi and its surroundings or the Kadamba kingdom is located in a very tough terrain. The western portions, right from Maharashtra, the western ghats of Maharashtra, Goa, Karwar, and the western ghats of northern and central part of Karnataka, they are a very tough terrain and quite covered with tropical forests. On the eastern side, they had some access to Bayalusime as well. So therefore, their army was combination of looking into these geographical conditions. The inscription says that they appointed Jagadala, Dandanayaka, and Senapati, who were officers to look after their army. And the crown prince from the royal family was supposed to help the king in administration of army. So therefore, the inscriptions also talks about very little about the army, but they usually refer to the administrative terminologies. Due to the limitations of literary as well as inscriptional references to army, we have this much understanding to say. By 5th century, the AD, that is in by the middle of the Kadamba Empire, we can see if you observe on the coastal part of Karnataka here, that is Banavasi is here, Talagonda, Honnavara, Bhatkal, Besnu. See, in this part of the region, including the coastal Karnataka and western Ghats of Karnataka, number of important settlements and number of important port sites are developing by this time, which means to tell that the Kadambas had given lot of importance for the development of number of settlements. Now, if you rightly understand when it comes to urbanization of South India, for a long period of time, the historians, particularly the historians, believed that South India urbanization in South India was very very late development compared to northern India. This was a very kind of loose and general statement which was trending for a long period of time in historical debates. But if we start understanding the Kadamba region or the Karnataka region very, very carefully, we can see that our urbanization had already started long ago, and our urbanization characteristic is different than that of northern urbanization. How it is different? It is different because we adopted urbanization in its own pan cultural conditions. Whereas urbanization in northern India, they resorted to rapid state formations and economic development. Our urbanization is mainly oriented towards establishing a capital and cultural centers. So, therefore, when it comes to urbanization, what is the contribution of the Banavasi kingdom or the Kadamba kingdom to urbanization? You might have also heard about something called Banavasi Mandala or Banavasi 12,000, 12,000 Banavasi Nagaragalu ಅಥವಾ ಈ ತರ or Nadu. Now, this reference called Banavasi 12,000, we can understand that Banavasi was a capital and it was a larger settlement and it was a capital hub of administration. Whereas the epigraphic evidences which talks about the use of word Nagara, many a times the Kadamba inscription refers to a term called Nagaras, particularly inscriptions belonging to 5th century Common Era. For example, the Biruru copper plate inscriptions. Uh, you must be knowing Kadur and Birur areas, and Birur copper plate, the copper plate which was found there belonging to Kadambas, it mentions about the Nagaras. Later on, when the Rashtrakutas were ruling, it talks about it. Rashtrakuta inscription mentions about the existence of a province called Banavasi Hannedu Savira. It also refers, the same Rashtrakuta inscriptions also refers to a Banavasi Mandala, which was located between the rivers of Varada and Tungabhadra. For your information, Banavasi, the capital, it is located on the river bank of Varada. And Varada is the tributary of Tungabhadra. The stretch between Varada to the Tungabhadra, the confluence area at Galag, number of settlements must have developed and that region must have been very important for trade exchanges and cultural exchanges, and this is referred later on in the Rashtrakuta records of 8th and 9th century onwards. So therefore we should understand Banavasi Hannedu Savira or Banavasi Nadu as Hannedu Savira or more or less similar number of settlements which are developed, and the number of settlements, many of them out of it must have developed to a centers of urbanization. Now, when we say centers of urbanization, it is not just about infrastructure, it is not about the structural evidences or buildings. Rather, urbanization suggests the efficiency of state administration, economic prosperity, trade exchanges, existence of merchants, and various other trade associated populations and producing population, those who are associated with the production also. So, therefore, this Banavasi Nadu can be taken as a very core area or core regions of Nadu, which is contributing for large proportion of revenue to the Kadambas kingdom. Now, let me make some attempts to take you to on the pure archaeological evidences or archaeological sources that we are talking about as a site itself. I told you that the Banavasi was the, as we know, the Banavasi was the capital, and it is has to be understood that a capital city is always a fortified city. So do the Banavasi. Banavasi, a fort, or today's what you see in the Sirsi when you go to Banavasi, the fort area, that 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 fort had started developing right from the Kadamba period. So, how do we understand the urbanization, the urban character of Banavasi is Banavasi, which was a capital of Kadamba, located on the banks of the Varada, is that number of embankments or fortification walls had developed between the Banavasi and Gudnapura. Like Talagunda, Gudnapur is another major settlement during the Kadambas, next to Banavasi as a capital. Or let me put it in simple word, Gudnapura and Talagunda, they were associated towns or associated larger settlements compare in connection with the Banavasi as a capital city. So this between the region of Gudnapura and Banavasi, which is an adjoining region, we can see number of small settlements to larger settlements had already developed in the extreme ecological conditions, which clearly tells us that during the Kadambas, when they were ruling Banavasi, population was much more higher, and the number of smaller settlements between Gudnapur and Banavasi. Today we can today we have surveyed almost 200 sites. 200 sites between Gudnapur and Banavasi belonging to the Kadamba period, which tells us that high density of settlements had developed, and high density of settlements because they were contributing in terms of production of craft and resources that was supporting the economy of the Kadamba kingdom in the capital. On the other hand, which will also tell us that the Banavasi and its surrounding was becoming a very major hub in entire southern India, not only in Karnataka. Because apart from this region of Banavasi, we can talk about the Chandravalli, which is located in Chitradurga district, and other parts of it. But the Banavasi and its surrounding region started to become a very busy demographic profile in terms of culture as well as economy. It's not just economy of production, rather it is also of hub becoming a hub of cultural development. So that you can see with this timeline whereby between 4th to 7th century common era, the Banavasi region, the Banavasi area was becoming very occupied and becoming very busy in terms of demographical developments. Now, what do we understand by Banavasi? Banavasi, as we always refer it as a capital city, but it was not just a capital city, rather it is a landscape of landscape of very sacred and cultural development that has taken place. The 200 sites and many of the settlements or site evidences in Banavasi and surrounding has shown the temples belonging to Vaishnavism, Shaivism, and Jainism, and number of shrines that are local shrines or tribal shrines also. So therefore, there is a lot of cultural development that had taken place in this region belonging to Vaishnavism, Shaivism, and Jainism, and also the patronage or continuity of tolerance towards the folk traditions or the local deities or regional deities or the forest deities started to continue. On the other hand, since the Banavasi region for a small period of time it was in the control of Shatavahana, there is some influence of Buddhism also. Even the Sri Lankan records, such as the Deepavamsa and Mahavamsa, which is written in Pali language later on, it talks about where the first ceremony was conducted in Pataliputra, but there were a number of people who dispatched from there and they moved towards Vanavasi. Vanavasi is Banavasi. That is a small episode. In terms of religious locations or a kind of sacred locations, you can see these kind of sites which are in the form of the mounds. Not only mounds, they are settlement mounds, number of mounds out of 200 settlements. Coming to the fort and fortification area, it is a oval kind of a fort, and this fort during the time of Kadamba period, the thickness of the wall was about 20 to 30 meters, which shows that the fort was built in a highly secured manner and in a very strong fortification wall. 20 to 30 meters width of the fortification wall, or one wall, the width of the wall is almost 20 to 30 meters, means we are talking about a very well developed fortification technology and engineering standards that has met during this time by the Kadambas. The moat, that is the water area surrounding this fort, was almost 10 to 20 meters deep. And remember, this is the Shumaga region is one of the region that receives high rainfall, and it needs a larger capacity. The moats need a larger capacity to store the water. On the other hand, as I said, since it is a high rainfall area, number of streams and number of reservoirs becomes very important to be developing. So exactly the same thing that we can start seeing, where within the forts, within the larger forts, number of small enclosure or small forts started to develop, and they were called as tigani. And what are these tigani? These tiganis were built of earth or clay, and they were also built about laterite rocks. For example, in Kannada, we called it as the ittike, the laterite blocks that were used. So therefore, the use of laterite blocks also goes back to the engineering standards of the Kadamba kingdom itself, because it are locally available. So these kind of private enclosures within the administrative fortification is also seen, which tells us that the elite as well as the rich merchant class had their own private space that they had developed within the Banavasi protection. As I told, this is the region which receives high rainfall. Therefore, taming or domestication of water is very important to avoid floods, to avoid scarcity of water during the summer. Because this is a highly elevated area we are talking. When it rains, rivers will be highly charged. When it is not raining, when the rain stops, the water slopes towards the downhill, and it starts to see the scarcity of water during the summer. This is the condition in some of the parts of Western Ghats. Same way, therefore, it becomes very important for the Kadamba rulers to construct number of irrigation tanks and reservoirs. The 200 sites that were surveyed between the Gudnapur and Banavasi, number of ancient reservoir structures and tanks were identified. For example, you can see on the left side of the photograph, which looks like a kalyani, which is also called in English as a tank, as a reservoir or some sort. So therefore, about 45 reservoirs were constructed within Banavasi and surrounding of Banavasi. Now, this number of reservoirs tells us that the Kadamba rulers had given lot of importance to the irrigation system. That means the irrigation system for agriculture, for domestic activities or domestic consumption was given high priority in the Kadambas administration. And these 45 reservoirs are also found with kind of sluice and kind of technology which can sluice gates, which means to tell us that the water, it will avoid overflow of the water. Next to reservoirs, if you observe this contour map, the blue area and the pointed areas are all nothing but locations of water reservoirs that they had constructed during the time of Kadambas. In addition to that, Banavasi area also has number of temples, sculptural evidences, and it required lot of raw materials or raw natural resources. In this region, the major formation is laterite and some sedimentary rocks as well. Now, out of these rocks, remember, laterite was very rich in iron. I mean, even today in the coastal Karnataka, if you go through, you will see number of lateral formations. These laterites contains rich content of iron which is used for making of iron tools and implements. So therefore, extracting of laterites and lateritic rocks for smelting iron, for stone quarries, for making sculptures, for making structures or walls, for industrial activities were becoming very important kind of industries here. They can be called as the masonry industries or stone quarrying industries that had developed during the Kadambas. When it comes to settlement pattern of the Kadamba's capital city Banavasi, we can see a lot of development happening. For example, with this slide, you can see between the early centuries of late centuries of before Common Era until 7th century, there are number of settlements that were established, fortifications were made, reservoirs were made, number of villages were established during the Kadamba period by 7th century, if you see in the right side of the map. Same map, if you compare with the later period, 7th century to 16th century, further developments occur, but the foundations of the Kadamba's contributions. So that is about the archaeology and settlement resources of the Banavasi itself. Now let me come to a very last important section. What do we understand by very precisely by inscriptions when it comes to Kannada language, Kannada culture, and establishing a strong nationalistic identity? The nationalistic identity can be seen in terms of inscriptions. For example, they issued lot of inscriptions which testifies their their patronage and their feelings towards establishing a geography of a state, that establishing a patriotic state or affiliation to a geographical region is also seen in number of variables that is there in the Kadamba inscription. For example, if you see the locations of Kadamba inscription talks number of refers to number of places. They talk about geographical conditions, raw materials, resources. It talks about the temples, Hindu temples, Jaina temples, and religious institutions, secular settlements, secular buildings, agricultural features, and so on. These inscriptions give information towards date, dynasty, language, script, and lot of information that is coming to tell us about the genealogy of the Kadamba rulers, the grants that were given by the Kadamba rulers for in terms of land, villages, agriculture, water, commemoration, or memorial grants. They talks about details of lands, how lands were measured, how lands were subject to the taxes. It talks about donors, it talks about donee also. When the donors or royal officials, merchants, and intermediary elites, the donee, who is the donee? It talks about the donees who are Hindu temples, Jaina institution, Buddhist institution, Brahmana officials, then a number of investments that they have made for the secular developments, and so on. When it comes to language, how do we understand this? So far, we have got about 58 inscriptions belonging to the Kadambas across the Kadamba Empire. Out of this 58 inscriptions, you can see number of inscriptions that are differs from time to time period. And to date the types of inscription, they can be copper plate inscriptions, stone inscriptions, or inscriptions engraved on the stone, and the pillar inscriptions. When it comes to grants, even the grants, out of 52 inscription, we can identify the grants given during different period to different institutions by different rulers of the Kadamba rulers. And if it comes to taxes, it refers to the taxes such as I mentioned you, taxes related to excise duties, internal revenues, taxes on labor, taxes on soldier, taxes on gifts, betel nuts, betel leaves. Lot of these kind of taxes were also becomes very important references or information from the inscriptions. Over the period of time, the number of inscriptions started to spread in Karnataka. If you carefully observe this map, now what does it mean when the inscriptions are spreading? Means the logic is that the inscriptions are engraved or the inscriptions are installed where there is very important settlements or where there are larger number of population. So as we know, many of the inscriptions are Kannada inscriptions and Sanskrit inscription. We can see during the Kadamba period, number of inscriptions started to spread. Initially, during the second to fourth century, there were only few locations which had inscriptions. Once the Kadamba rulers started to rule during fourth to fifth century, inscriptions started to become more in the heart region of Kadamba Empire, and it started to spread towards southern Karnataka also. By 5th to 6th century, again the number of inscriptions starts to increase and number of new settlements or places of economic importance started to establish. It was not only Banavasi. If you observe this two maps, 4th and 5th century map and 5th and 6th century map, the number of cities or number of settlements started to increase during the Kadambas. This is one of the crucial contributions of the Kadamba dynasty, where number of new settlements or existing settlements becoming prosperous, and it started to develop a sense of regional affiliation or geographical affiliation, which I call as the foundation of nationalism or the foundation towards the affiliation towards the state started to increase gradually over the period of time and time. And Kadambas, they were very tolerant to multicultural attitude. You can see their grants through the inscriptional evidences given to Hindu temples, Jaina institutions, for agricultural purposes, for official purposes, for construction of reservoirs, tanks, number of. And out of this, most of the inscriptions are given for residential purposes or at the residential levels. About 30 inscriptions out of 52, 32 inscriptions of the Kadamba period, it has given grants or patronage to developing smaller settlements or for the secular purposes in addition to the grants to the religious institutions. So therefore here we are talking about a state, the Kadamba state, which is for the very first time in southern India, for the very first time in the regions of Karnataka, a state formation has taken place, and that state formation is the foundations laid by the Kadambas. Second point is that any state, any kingdom becomes rich not only because of the wealth or the military capacity they have. In fact, when it comes to the army and military strength of the Kadambas, we have very less literary as well as inscriptional evidences, which means to tell us that they're, they may not be having such a large standing army. Therefore, it is not about the army which determines the strength of a state. Rather, in the case of Kadambas, for example, here is a kingdom which shows that language, culture, expansion of an economy is the core contributions for formation of a wealthy state or a prosperous state. And that even in that case, Kadambas laid the foundation for trade, for economy, for development of new settlements becoming larger cities, and larger cities becoming active later on for the contribution in a larger state context. So, therefore, in all these dynamics, with the inscriptional evidences, language, as well as numismatic evidences, and very much importantly, the archaeological evidences, which when we collaborate together, we can say that here is a state which gave importance to its geographical nationalism. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I would like to thank Dr. Arjun, sir, on behalf of the Kate for having delivered a very detailed and informative presentation on the Kadamba dynasty. You pictured us our own dynasty in its myriad forms, starting with geographical elements to socio-cultural and political aspects, which took us back to those days. So I once again thank you, sir, for the given talk. Now I would like to welcome the Honorary President and Director of Academics, CUK, Professor Basaraj P. Donor, sir, to give his presidential on the talk, and later the platform will be open for the discussion. Sir, please.
Good evening, Sangmesh. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible, sir.
Yeah. Good evening to viewers of Dharwad Kate, lovers of literature, and Dr. Arjun, today's guest speaker. To begin with, let me thank Dr. Arjun, my very dear friend and colleague in Central District of Karnataka, Kalburgi, for accepting our invitation and delivering a wonderful talk for about 65 to 70 minutes. And Dr. Arjun is a serious student of literature. He is basically a teacher of archaeology, and his interest in ancient Indian history and medieval and modern Indian history is equally commendable. I am proud of his scholarship, and I'm also proud of his commitment to his subject, archaeology and history. He's a very serious young academic working in Central District of Karnataka, Kalburgi. And today it was a wonderful talk that he delivered today, and he drew our attention to a lot of historical documents, evidences, inscriptions about the first major dynasty of the state of Karnataka, that is Kadamba Dynasty. I also studied history for 5 years at my PUC and at my BA. History was my minor subject. And as I listened to Dr. Arjun, I remembered 3 to 4 wonderful history teachers who taught me ancient Indian history, particularly the Kadamba dynasty. One Dr. Gowder in Sindhi, HCC College, Sindhi, he taught us ancient Indian history. And thank you, Arjun. You made me remember my own teachers who taught me history, two decades ago. And the talk was, it's a very powerful talk in the sense it was lively, and it was full of insights and also very, very scholarly talk. And it was full talk. It was wholesome talk. And thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I'm personally very happy that I have learned so much from Arjun about the ancient Indian history in general, and particularly the Kadamba dynasty. I knew that, I was under the impression that the dynasty came to an end only in the 6th century AD. I didn't know that later on they ruled from several other states, from Dharwad and also from Goa and several parts of the state of Karnataka. I didn't know. I didn't have any idea about this. Thank you so much for enlightening me on the Kadamba history. What is important about your presentation today is you made us realize the importance and significance of Kadamba dynasty, and our politicians have to read ancient Indian history, because Kadamba dynasty, they ruled for 250 years. 250 years. And later on also they ruled for several centuries. Okay, 280 years, you said. 280 years they ruled major part of Karnataka, and also part of Andhra Pradesh, undivided Andhra Pradesh, and Tamil Nadu and Goa and other southern Indian parts. So they did not build only the political narrative. They built cultural narrative, literary narrative, historical narrative, art, culture. Oh my God, they contributed a good deal to all walks of life, all walks of life. So their commitment to society, their commitment to art and literature is something our politicians should understand. So they come to power for 5 years and they do only politics, only dirty politics they do. What is their contribution in the development of modern state? Okay, so we today we say that we are more tolerant and more secular, more advanced and more scientific. Arjun, I have my own reservation about this. And the people who ruled us, our ancestors, they were more tolerant than we are. You talked about plurality. Now we every day we talk about plurality. We don't know what we mean by plurality. So in a plural culture, right or wrong or left, every thought process should have its own place in our society. Otherwise, how can we become plural?
Exactly.
So all of them, you made us realize how tolerant the Mayur Sharma was, and the other Kadamba kings were. They were tolerant and they were broad and they were advanced, and they also respected the pluralism of this country. We cannot give. I don't think that there is any Indian king who was extremely intolerant. No. Today we have become intolerant. We have become intolerant today. But they were very tolerant, very tolerant. So that's the reason why I say all politicians have to study Indian history. And you people should submit a report to the President of India for making study of history as a component uh, factor to become a politician. They should understand Indian Indian history. I mean, India's great history. And all these dynasties ruled for 300 years. Pulikeshi, Rashtrakuta, Vijayanagara. Vijayanagara, we hardly talk about Vijayanagara Empire. And Vijayanagara Empire is one of the finest empires, one of the most beautiful, powerful empires that the whole world has ever seen. So all of us should be proud of our ancient Indian dynasties and ancient Indian dynasties. And this is one of the major concerns, this is one of the major objects of Darod. We wanted to make our young people understand the significance and of the ancient Indian history and their contribution to all walks of life. And your talk will be remembered for a long time because you really made us understand the importance and significance of the Kadamba dynasty. And you talked about Rajkumar. I tell you, Rajkumar was my first history teacher. I learned history from Rajkumar, be it Mayura, Sri Krishna Devaraya, Yemadi Pulkeshi, right? Basavanna.
Sure.
He was a very big man. He was the only actor in Kannada who made movies on all important dynasties. And he wanted to make a couple of movies on Rashtrakuta kings, Nrupatunga and other kings, of course, for many reasons. Because of age, he could not do it. And our dramatists, our filmmakers, our actors should also show a lot of interest in ancient Indian dynasties. And it's our people are more interested in politics, in making political statement, but that there was caste system today. So we got independence in 1947, and we got our constitution written in 1950. And who can say that we don't have the caste system today in India? Why haven't we solved this problem? And why do we say that only ancient Indian they practiced caste system? No, nothing like that. It's more political. It has nothing to do with ancient Indian literature, culture, civilization, tradition, religion. Okay, it's all political. It's all political game then and now also. So thank you so much, and Sangamesh, you can take questions, and you please interact with Dr. Arjun. Thank you, Arjun, again, and I request you to come back to the Kate every now and then and give us wonderful talks on ancient Indian literature, culture, archaeology, and so on. Thank you so much. Over to Sangamesh.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for the remarkable words. And now the floor is open for discussion, and you can interact with Dr. Arjun, sir. Rajeshri ma'am, you have raised your hand. You can interact with sir. Or anybody can interact with sir.
Yeah, any questions or any queries that you have?
Or you can share your understanding or your own view with regard to Kadamba dynasty, aligned with sir's thoughts. Okay, if there is none to interact with sir, then sir, should we?
I can conclude.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yeah. First and foremost, I would like to thank Dr. Arjun sir for having spared his time in his busy schedule and for having delivered a beautiful presentation on our own dynasty, of Kadamba dynasty. And with regard to the talk, the Indian revisiting ancient Indian dynasties, the webinar series, it began very well, and sir, you concluded it with a beautiful remark with on our own kingdom. I would like to thank you once again on behalf of the Katte and all the viewers of Dharwad Katte. Keep visiting us, sir. And so, as mentioned in the beginning, so with this, this particular webinar series will be concluded. And so, as mentioned earlier, so every month end, that is to say on Sundays, Sir Basaraj P. Donor sir will be delivering his lectures on Shakespeare. So I request everyone to be part of it. Thank you, sir. Thank you once again. And I thank all the viewers of the Harvard Kate. Keep supporting us.
Thank you, and I wish you all the best for the Dharwad Kate team, and look forward for very fruitful meetings like this. Thank you, sir, for giving the opportunity.
Thank you, sir.